Welcome, everybody. Digital Marketing Wednesday. After an act of supreme irony where the internet in Ben's office building temporarily went out, we are here live with you, only just a few minutes late, and we're excited today to talk with you about a handful of very, very important topics. We're going to cover digital marketing versus social media and some considerations in each of those things. We're going to dig into some metrics and ad spend and the things that you should be monitoring. And then Ben's going to walk you through pillar content and 12 steps of creating pillar content. Before we get to that, though, Ben, we have something very exciting to do. If you're not aware of this, we recently launched a brand new website. You can check that out at middletonelitecoaching.com. And as part of that, what we did is we ran an internal contest with our fantastic clients to further build out testimonials and case studies that you guys can go see what they think about the work that Ben and Debbie and Zach and Brian and Kaylee and I all do. And as part of that, we did a fun drawing for them. And everyone who submitted a testimonial is here in this very official hat with a very official drawing system that is Post-it notes from my desk. And oops, somebody fell out. Put you back in. So I'm going to draw the winner right now live so we can see. And then I'll tell you what the prize was. And the winner is Phoebe Lael Chambers, Team Lael Chambers of Infinity Realty in Charleston, South Carolina. So Phoebe is the grand winner. Thank you for that. And she's going to get the prize of her choice. We gave away $500 off their next coaching bill, a Yeti cooler, a really cool rolling Yeti cooler, or a half day with me or Debbie and their team. So Phoebe's going to get to choose that. So thanks everybody who participated in it. Super, super pumped about that. All right, Ben, so let's talk a little bit about digital and social. I guess before we get to that, what's the latest in Raleigh, North Carolina, other than sporadic internet outages?
Rocking and rolling. Everybody's apparently back in the office. So now internet is like stressing me. I'm sitting here looking at it going, is it going to stick? Hopefully it will. If not, we'll make it work. But that's kind of the role we're playing right now, right? Just rolling with the punches, figuring it out. But overall, things are good in Raleigh. Good weather, good real estate market. Can't complain.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to hear it. So let's build a little bit on digital versus social. So what the heck does that mean, and what should they be paying attention to?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a good thing to think about. So we like to take digital and social in two separate categories when I'm talking to people about this. Digital to me is anything website related for the most part. So think your hub website, niche website, landing pages, single property websites, anything external from the social world. So social is the social platform. So Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok. That's your social network, right? And what they're used for are pretty different. And I see people tend to try to mix them or layer them, which you can do. So speaking about storytelling a little bit later on, you can tie all this together. It's just how you do it that matters. And if we look at social first, and then we can touch on digital. So one of my favorite things when I talk about social is the way you do things on each platform, or you package your message on each platform matters. And one of my favorite stories to tell about how this matters is, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a photo of Justin Bieber that went viral a couple months ago. And that photo was of him sitting on a park bench eating a burrito the wrong way. And people just went wild over it, went on the news, became one of the biggest, it was a huge blow up. The interesting thing behind that photo is that it was staged. It wasn't really Justin Bieber. It was a group of guys who were doing a test to see how they could make something go viral. And the interesting part of their test was when they set it up. So they hired an actor, they put a wig on him, they made him look like Justin Bieber, they had him sit on a park bench, they took a photo, making it look like it was paparazzi who caught the photo. And what they found, though, when they went to post that photo on different platforms, they posted it on Reddit, they posted it on BuzzFeed, they posted on all the social platforms beyond those, it got no traction the first time out. Like less than 10 people actually shared it or even saw the photo. And what they came to find out was it was how they packaged that message. So the second time around, when they were like, well, let's retry the exact same photo, we're going to repackage how we put it out there. And what they did was they went on a subreddit forum about things that frustrate people, right? And then they did this on Instagram. They found hashtags centered around things that frustrate people. And then they changed the verbiage on Facebook as well. And what they did, what happened at that point was it took off like a rocket because they spoke to the platforms they were on, and they took the message away from just putting something content wise out there, and they packaged it in a certain way. And it became so viral that, I mean, it got 10,000 shares within the first couple of hours once they went this mode of packaging and messaging around it. And then from there, it got them onto late night talk shows. It got people asking questions around, is something wrong with Justin Bieber because he doesn't know how to eat a burrito? I mean, it went that viral once they found the right thread. Exact same content, nothing changed, and then it went viral. So that's something I always think about when we're looking at our social platforms, is the conversation that takes place on each platform. One of the best ones, if you want to see some examples, and he does this in a lot of his videos, he actually gives real examples. And if you follow him, you can kind of rip off some of the stuff he uses, because the verbiage he uses is very, very good for that platform. Gary Vaynerchuk, you guys have heard me talk about Gary Vee before. He talks a lot about how what you write for your Facebook post, while you can use the same content on other platforms, how you write it on different platforms matters in terms of the platform algorithm accepting that as good content according to that platform, and getting the people of that platform to interact with it, right? So you can do something on Facebook that's more personal, more storytelling, more intentional around, you know, connecting your clients with the story. That's a certain way to go into a Facebook conversation. And to me, at this point, Facebook's kind of become the melting pot of all the social media platforms, right? They've taken a lot of features from other platforms and integrated them into Facebook. And so the content you put on there will really depend more so on what your outcome is or what you're trying to do with that content. So you can go personal, you can go business, you can go entertainment, you can go comedy, humor, you can go sad, whatever emotion you're trying to get out of the people you're putting it in front of, will really depend on what you want to do. Other platforms are very specific with how you have to write the content, right? Instagram's about really pretty pictures or really, really pretty videos, and giving them good content around that. They don't want a lot of long form written content. They don't want statistical analysis on their website or on their platform. It's more about creative engagement on their platform. So while Facebook may be a really good photo of a house that will still work on Instagram, you probably wouldn't write all the long form content that you would on the Facebook platform. Now shift that over to LinkedIn, which is quickly becoming one of the best places to put content in general. When you get on the LinkedIn platform now, they're not big on really pretty photos, things of that nature. They're more looking for business news, right? You have to put on your business news mindset, stats, numbers, giving them good information. Think simplified information as well. They want to be able to read through content very quickly. So again, you can use the same content on each platform. You just have to repackage the message. Otherwise, people will never wonder why Justin Bieber is eating a burrito the wrong way. And then we go to YouTube, and YouTube's long form, right? The question I always think in my mind for whenever I'm thinking of YouTube videos is that it is a how-to website, right, or platform. You can jot that in your notes. How to do X, Y, Z. That's the type of content that performs really, really, really well on YouTube. How to sell my home, how to buy a home, how to refinance my home, how to do a do-it-yourself project. How many of us on here, I know I'm guilty of this, if I have to go do a project at my house and I have no clue what I'm doing, where's the first place I go? I'm gonna go to Google, but guess who owns YouTube? Google. So they're gonna redirect me to a YouTube video on a how to do something. So long form content, how to content performs really, really well on YouTube. And then the other platforms that we look at, people ask me all the time about Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter. It's one of those where if you have the bandwidth to put content there, I would do it. I know there are some people who do very well in those verticals. It's also one of the things where I say master the big ones first and then move on the other ones. They're still working to figure out how to monetize TikTok. They're still working to figure out how to monetize Snapchat. You can run ads on there. You can run certain things to people on the platform, where they're trying to figure out how to monetize it. They have not gotten to the point like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or even YouTube has gotten to, where they now have a definable way to say, okay, if you spend this amount of money, you generate this amount of leads, you get this amount of attention. They haven't figured that out yet on those platforms. And until they get that methodology down, at the moment, I would say concentrate on the big boys for the moment. So social overall, it's about what's your message, right? So when you go into a room, it's almost like going into a party, thinking about the type of party you're walking into. And then from there, that'll help you really form the conversation on your social platform. And the idea on your social platforms typically is to move them to our digital network, right? Our digital world. We eventually want them to come into our ecosphere. And that's the friction battle that you're going to engage in with each platform, because they want those users, of course, to stay on their platforms. They want them to be engaged in their platforms. So we can switch over to talking about digital. I don't know if there's anything else on social that we want to cover there. If we have any questions on social, it's more about the messaging on that particular platform, making sure that your message is appropriate to the platform, because those little tweaks in how you put that message out there makes a huge difference, as the Justin Bieber story really shows.
Yeah. So you mentioned questions. I don't have any right now. I will say, for those of you who are watching this live, feel free to post some questions in the comments and we'll make sure that we take them. Before you move to digital, Ben, I actually did not know that there was an improper way to eat a burrito. So that was good to know. I'll be looking forward to checking that out. And then I'm working on getting into Instagram. So I'm kind of the old man here, I suppose. So I think my first Instagram post is actually going to be like my flipped up mullet. For those of you who are fans of 1990s country, I'm going to be working on my like Tim McGraw from the Indian Outlaw cover. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, Google it after we're done. I just have to grow in the mustache and kind of let this thing work its way out just a little bit more. You didn't come here to hear about my mullet, though. You came here to hear about digital. So let's change gears, Ben, and let's you and I kind of toss the ball around on that for a minute too.
Yeah, so digital really for me comes down to websites, right? It really talks about the type of websites that are out there, things you can do with them. And you just went through a whole website rebuild, so I thought it'd be interesting for you to share your experience on it. And the one thing I always tell people to imagine is, and I know you've experienced this, Bill, because we've talked about it a couple of times, where you'll click on something on a website. So imagine that you found a nice pair of shoes, right? You're like, I like these pair of shoes. And then if you're anything like me and you're a shiny object person, you're going to get drawn into something else. And then you're going to go on your social media and suddenly boom, there's that pair of shoes in your newsfeed. And then you click on that newsfeed, right? Because you're like, oh yeah, I was interested in that. What a lot of agents end up doing is, if we're taking that pair of shoes as a house, is they drop you on the main page of their website. Now, as a consumer, could you find your way back to that pair of shoes if someone did that? Yes, you could. Is it frustrating? Yeah, it can be. So that's that friction point to talk about there. And that's where we could talk about the niche websites and everything. But first, talk a little bit, Bill, about the rebuild of the website. What were some of the things that you guys really concentrated on? What did you experience? Because you actually built one from the ground up. So I think that's a really cool thing to talk about and really let everybody hear a little bit about your experience there.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll give you sort of a first couple of disclaimers on this whole thing. Is I didn't actually build it. We outsourced that to someone far better at it than us, and then collaboratively as a team, we worked through this whole thing. So let me walk you through a couple of key points, just sort of off the cuff as I see it. So the first thing that's important to know is we pulled the trigger on this the week that we started doing the Double Down series, which was 8 weeks ago. So we said yes to a big investment in the business, staring down the barrel of this thing. And we don't need a cookie for it or anything. I mean, go check out MiddletonEliteCoaching.com. Tell us what you think about the work that ultimately we all did to get it there. However, I think it's evidence of the things that we've been talking about over the past couple of months and saying, this is something that we understand. This is something that's important. We're taking a calculated risk here. I'm going to touch later, Ben, when you get to the metric stuff, about some other fun stuff I sort of like old man my way through the Wall Street Journal about. So I'll tease everybody with that. I guess a couple of things that before I hand it back to Ben is we looked at it and said, we want to make sure that this is the best possible representation of us as a company, and we're going to build on that. If you've been around us for a while, you may be sort of scratching your head and saying, well, why did it take you 2.5 years to build a website? It's a good question. And it's also about the prioritization of tasks. As we looked at it and said, we were real clear on these are the things that we're going to do. This is the sequence we're going to do them in. We're going to be respectful of the bandwidth that we have. You can't go chase everything at the same time. As Ben said, you got to pick the battles. You got to go win those battles and just keep stacking things on top of it. It was a labor of love. Debbie and Kaylee would both tell you that as well. There were nights I was sitting here at the desk with my eyeballs bleeding, looking at the stuff. Ultimately, though, I'm going to give you 4 things to write in your notes before I hand it back to Ben. And it's the sequence of learning and development of anything that you or I will ever accomplish in our lives. 4 steps. Number 1, unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. Same for me. It's not you specifically, not Ben specifically, all of us. We don't know what we don't know is phase 1. Phase 2 is conscious incompetence. We had a lot of those moments in the build out of the website where like, I didn't even know that thing existed. I don't even know what you're talking about right now. So we had to go to people who understood that really well, and then used an internal filter like Ben, who understands this, to make sure that that was in fact the right direction to be going. So that was super helpful. So conscious incompetence is phase number 2. I now know what I don't know. My gaps have been exposed. Phase 3 is conscious competence. I now know what I know, and I'm sort of robotically grinding my way through it. And that's what a lot of us are doing right now with some of the stuff that Ben's been sharing through Digital Marketing Wednesday. You've moved through that phase. We've been doing this 8 weeks now. I didn't know what I didn't know. Now I know I have gaps. Now I'm working on plugging those gaps. A lot of you are out doing virtual open houses or walkthrough listing lives, and then you're giving us the feedback that it's terrifying and you're so glad you did it anyway, which is evidence of conscious competence. So then phase 4, unconscious competence. Unconscious competence is when you do it without really having to think about it. So best analogy, and I'll close the loop with this. Best analogy is think about driving a car. The first time you sat behind the wheel of a car, no matter how old you were, 12, 13, 15, however old it was, you realized in that moment how little you knew about driving a car. You'd been a passenger in a car for however long, thought you knew, and then the second it was your turn to drive, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't really know what I'm doing. And now you'll ride down the interstate eating French fries, drinking a milkshake, throwing goldfish at your kids, talking on the phone, singing a song all at the same time, and somehow get there in one piece. It's because you're unconsciously competent in that area. And most people get to that point through a lot of trial and error. I drove my mom's brand new Ford Explorer into a river when I was 16 years old. That was fun. Everybody was safe. It was okay. We only went up to the doors. It was an example, though, of trial and error learning of driving, not the best way to do it. And so what we're hoping to do with the things we're doing here is to give you the information so you don't have to trial and error your way through all of this stuff. You just jump in at some of the topics that Ben is discussing. So that's sort of the process through. We say, here's what we're going to build. Here's what we want the end result to be. Manage it and execute it on a daily and weekly basis, and then follow that 4-step process, getting ultimately the goal is to unconscious competence. So Ben, back to you on some of the digital pieces, websites, niche websites, those things that you do really, really well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. It's definitely interesting. Like you said, the big thing is to have in mind, what is the outcome that you want? That's a great thing to jot in your notes. What is the outcome that you want? And when you're thinking of the digital side about all this, so we're taking the social and we're moving it to the digital side of things. And one of the things that I always think about is a quote I heard from a mentor. People want to be taken somewhere. People want to be taken somewhere, right? It's a really interesting thing to think about because we come from this world of the freedom of choice, right? We all want to be free to choose what we want to do, when in fact we want the illusion of choice. And one of the best studies that highlights this, and this is going to dive us back into the websites, I promise. One of the best studies that highlights this is from Columbia University when they were talking about the different jams, right? So they did a test where one afternoon they had a table set up with 24 jams on it, 24 varieties of jams. And what they did was when people walked by, they would measure how many people stopped and tested the jams and ultimately made a purchase. The second study on that was the compare group, where they compared it to just 6 varieties of jam, just 6 varieties, right? So 24 to 6. And what they found was, and this is also going to lead you back into the metric conversation. See, we're landing the plane and all this, tying ribbons around it. I know Bill's like jumping with joy. But one of the big things here is the metrics of the two studies. So out of the 24 varieties of jam that they had on the table, 60% of the passerbys stopped to taste the jam. Compared to the group with only 6 varieties of jam, only 40% of the passerbys stopped by to test the jam. So just based off that, we would want more varieties of jam, right? Not if your ultimate outcome was to get someone to buy or purchase the jam. What they found was that the group of 24, that less than 3% of them actually purchased the jam. Out of that group that stopped at the 24 varieties, less than 3% purchased the jam. In comparison to the 40% or the 6 varieties, they had almost, I think it was 30% of people purchased the jam. So if you do that on a numbers basis, you have 100 people stop, 60 out of 160 stop at your table to test your jams. If you have 24 on the table, that's only about 2 people. I think it's like 1.8 to be precise, actually end up purchasing the jam. Whereas if you have 100 people and 40 people stop, but then you had the 30% purchase, that's 12 people. Which one would you choose? Right? So it's really understanding what metrics matter. That's the first part of that. The second part of that is everybody wants to be taken somewhere, but they want to be taken somewhere. So through this whole process of the social media side of things and your messaging on those platforms, it connects over to the websites. And the reason I'm a fan of having different websites or landing pages is the conversation that you can have on those is more customized to the person you're driving to that website. So if you remember back when we started this off talking about websites, we talked about, a single shoe comes up on your website, you're hunting down a specific pair of shoes, one pair of shoes, and you get off the website, you go on your social media, you see that shoe, you click on it, it takes you back to the main page of the website. This would be what we call a hub website. If you want to write that in your notes, a hub website. I'm a fan of everybody having a hub website. The big reason is that it's kind of your catch-all for any content ideas that you have. Any ideas whatsoever, buyers, sellers, property management, new construction, commercial, whatever it is, it's your catch-all for every content idea that you have. Whereas in comparison to a niche website, that could be a very hyper-specific type of website that is just built for sellers or just built for FSBOs or just built for expireds. Now, the beauty of the niche website versus a hub website is that if you send traffic from your social platform to your niche website, it is like that person clicking on that single shoe and they land directly on the exact shoe they clicked on the niche website. And then all the other content surrounding it on that website is all about shoes. It's not about accessories. It's not about pants. It's not about shirts. It's just about shoes and really specific types of shoes that this person is interested in. And it probably has other articles about how to know if this is the right size pair of shoes for you, or best examples of people using our shoes, whatever it may be. It's all related to that shoe. The beauty of it is, and based on that study from Columbia University, it really shows that it narrows down the field of choices, which they're more likely to move down the buying path with you, right? So this is that part of that funnel conversation. We've taken them from a social channel, put them on a digital channel. Now we're trying to walk them down the path. And part of that is narrowing the choices that are in front of them. If they see a website with, all of this stuff on it for buyers and sellers, and it's just overwhelming, right? That's the word you want to avoid is if you're talking to your clients and they tell you that they got on your website and it's overwhelming, then we need to narrow down where they're going. Now, you can create niche websites within a website. The only part to that that's a little messy is as they start navigating back onto that bigger website, they can get into other parts of that website, the hub website, that may take them down other buying paths. So part of this to think about is when they land on your hub website or your niche website, what do you want them to do, right? What's the outcome that you want them to do? And then building that path around that. So that's how the two kind of intermingle. And then the little caveats I like putting on this is, say you have a hub website, but you don't want to build out a whole nother niche website. There's a lot of resources out there to build landing pages, to build single property websites, to build out funnels. One of the better ones that's really, really easy to use and not super expensive will be something like a ClickFunnel, right? ClickFunnels.com is a website that people use to build out landing page funnels And you can build out basically a standalone website is what it looks like. And it's a drag and drop editor, so there's not a lot of coding required or anything like that. So it's pretty simple to use. But if you wanted to build out for, say, for example, for FSBOs, you build out a FSBO guide, you have them click on the ad on your social channel, they land on that specific landing page that's built just for FSBOs, they're more likely to go to the next step, whatever that next step is. If it's contacting you, if it's downloading a guide, it just really confines them into a very specific buying pattern or a path where you get to direct it. I just go back to that. Everybody wants to be taken somewhere. So thinking on storytelling here. So this is kind of where it all wraps together, right? All right, this is like, it kind of goes around the whole piece. How are you telling the story? How are you getting people to go from one platform to another? And then say they decide not to work with you or buy or sell a home with you right now, right? Because that's the ultimate outcome that agents want. Maybe they don't want to buy or sell a home with you right now. How do they continue that path with you? How do they continue that journey with you? How are they still in your world? And part of that goes back to storytelling. So for me, there's a couple different things that I look at, and this is a super simplified version of this. I have three things that I'm always thinking about right now when it comes to writing advertising, any of our marketing material that goes out, or if we're designing funnels to take leads down a buying path. And I got this from two big places. So the Storyteller's Secret, Carmine Gallo, he also was the writer of the TED Talk book, or Talk Like TED. Really kind of one of the renowned experts on storytelling, how to formulate a story, how to build out a really powerful presentation. A lot of good examples in that book. And then, of course, I mentioned this one before, Story Brand by Donald Miller, right? That's where I actually get the whole framework for how we like to tell stories. So the first key thing, though, for you to write in your notes about storytelling and you're thinking of moving them from a social platform to a digital platform, the number one thing, you are not the hero. You are not the hero of the story. That is something that I think agents have lost sight of. And I think it's a really big miss and opportunity going forward. You are the guide, right? So Donald Miller lays out the whole framework for, you have a character who gets into trouble, then they meet a guide who gives them a plan, helps them find success and avoid failure, right? That's all the hero's journey. And before, agents were positioning, and they continue to position themselves as the hero of the story. You got to start thinking about your clients are the heroes of the story. How can we put them at the center of the story? What would they need from a guide, right? It's a really good reframe to say, well, if I'm in the guide instead of the hero shoes, what do they need? What would they find useful? How can I help them along their journey? So number one thing is, you are not the hero. You are the guide. That's your reframe for the day. The second piece is simplicity of the story. One of the best storytellers, I think, of all time, and a lot of people name him for his presentations that he did, was Steve Jobs. Every time he got on stage at Apple, he would tell a story, and it was simplified, right? A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but it's simplified. So when you're looking at writing your story for your clients or walking them down the path, you have to simplify the complex. That's one of my big things that we concentrate on is simplifying the complex for them so that they understand complex pieces. Home buying is complex. There's a lot of steps to it. There's a lot of tasks. There's a lot of little things that have to happen for the process to go smoothly. So how are you walking them down that line sequentially? How are you simplifying the story? On the front end, when we're trying to attract business, if your story sounds complicated, people lose interest. So you really have to think about, how can I go deep quickly? How can I go deep quickly? I always think about landing the first punch, right? Whenever somebody comes into a video or clicks on one of our ads or looks at any of our material, are we hitting it quick enough that they don't lose interest? I mean, people judge you when they see you within like what, 1/24th of a second or something like that the first time they see you. Now you put yourself on a video, you have to land and make them know you, like you, trust you. Typically, I mean, Facebook's down to measuring within the first 3 seconds. Think about that. So those measurements that Facebook gives you, 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 50% of the video, 25% of the video, 75% of the video, it's kind of a good benchmark of human behavior. There's a reason they put 3 seconds in there, because people are clicking out of your video or scrolling by faster than 3 seconds. So think about that next time you're putting together your story, or how are you presenting this material. You have 3 seconds to land that punch. You have 3 seconds to get your point across, whatever you're trying to do to capture that person's attention, to move them farther down the buying path, wherever it is. And again, if you come from the viewpoint of I'm a guide versus I'm a hero, big difference, big difference. Final key piece, and we mentioned this already, and Bill kind of talked about it in building out of the website, is knowing your final destination. It goes back to that people like to be taken somewhere. People like to know where they're going. They may not want to have the choice in the end, right? They want to think they have the choice. They really don't. They want you to tell them where to go based on your expertise and your reputation and your professionalism, all that kind of stuff. So move them down the path. How are you moving them down the path? Where do you want them to go? That's the biggest thing. I always ask that question. I'm pretty sure it's encoded in my DNA at this point. Anytime someone brings anything to me in terms of marketing or a challenge we're trying to overcome, I'm always trying to understand what the outcome is, because then we can formulate a game plan. It's the same with your clients when they come in the door or they come in as a prospect. We have to hit on, what's the ultimate outcome for this person? Do they want to buy a home? Do they want to sell a home? Do they want to buy and sell a home? And you got to think about how different that journey is for people. The generalization that you could cheat with, and yes, it is cheating. You used to be able to cheat with this back 5-10 years ago because no one else was doing it. So if you had any type of journey whatsoever, you could get away with it. Now it has to be customized. But think about how different the journey is. Imagine for a second the difference in the journey between someone who is in their late 60s, all their kids are growing up and on their own, and they're going to downsize from the home that they raised their family in for 30 years, and they're going to buy something else. Think about how different it is for them versus a first-time home buyer, right? How much different the challenges are, how different their experiences, how different their whole worlds are. I mean, so that difference demands that your storytelling to get them into your funnels or to interact with you has to be different. The same message will not appeal to both of those categories. So you really have to know your final destination. And we've talked about this before. Define your avatar, define your ideal client. Defining that person will help you write this story for them. And that's what's going to help you take them from a social platform to a digital platform, right? And the digital is important because a big piece of the hub website, niche website, landing page, single property website, whatever you're using, is to capture the information of those people so that they can stay in your world. So the big thing about the digital side of everything that you're doing, whatever story you're telling, that's your ecosystem. That's your world. Once somebody's in your world, they don't leave your world, right? They may go back out and look at other websites. They'll use Zillow, they'll use Redfin, whatever website they may go use. We want them to stay in that world with you where you have control over the narrative. So always be thinking about your final destination for people. That will also impact where you drive them to on those websites. So storytelling wraps around your social and your digital. So think of storytelling kind of as the bridge, right? Social bridges storytelling to digital, continue storytelling till you get to the end of the path and you either help them find success and avoid failure.
Yeah. Well, Ben, that I'm a big fan of storytelling and the art of it and a student of it. In fact, a couple of years ago, Debbie and I had come to our team advance someone who spoke with us specifically about storytelling. You mentioned Carmine Gallo, who's my favorite author and researcher on that. He's written a number of books, including Talk Like Ted. And wrote one of his early books was The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, where he broke down all of those elements. So for those of you who are looking to go on this quest about storytelling, both in the face-to-face or the digital realm, start with Gallo and then build off of it from there. So I know next you want to talk about metrics and things that because we're getting a lot of questions about this. So maybe kind of hit us with your thoughts there, please.
Yeah, good question. So the first thing is a reframe. Let's start with the reframing. Good question. How much are you willing to pay for a closing? I want you to think about that for a second. What's the dollar amount that you would pay for a closing? And you need to really think on, you need to know your key numbers, right? Your net per closing, all that good stuff. But generally, you'll have an idea of what you would make on a closing. So I ask you, how much are you willing to pay for a closing? That's the amount you should be willing to spend to go get it. And the way I actually had this conversation with my team today, when it comes to Facebook lead generation or Google pay-per-click or SEO or any type of inbound lead generation, the way I like to think about this is, let's just say hypothetically, I want you to imagine a jar with $10,000 in it. If that's your average commission, we're going to use that because it's a nice round number. $10,000 in the jar, cash. right? Imagine that. I'm going to take that jar. I'm going to go out to a field. I'm going to dig 500 holes in that field. I'm going to bury that jar in one of the holes. I'm not going to tell you which hole it's in. I'm just going to tell you that out in that field, there's a $10,000 jar. You can go find it. And I asked that question, and I'm curious is, when would you stop digging the holes up? Would it be after 50? Would it be after 5? Is it 400? Or is the answer until you found the daggum $10,000? That's what I go back to with the metrics that we're looking at for people. When you're looking at the inbound lead generation game, too many people give up too early, right? Or they want a very specific number. They say, well, if I make 10 calls and 10 emails and 10 texts, it's going to end up, it doesn't work that way. Go big number with it, right? So say you drive in 100 leads. If it's a 1% conversion ratio, which is average in the industry, 1 to 3%, you're going to get one closing. Is that one closing worth it to you? Average cost on Facebook leads, and I'll give you the industry-wide average of what Facebook released, or heard in a conversation that Facebook was releasing about how much real estate professionals pay for leads. In my opinion, it's pretty high compared to the results we're getting. But really, what are you willing to pay to get that closing, right? So if it's 1%, one closing, and you've got 100 leads, and say you're paying $3 a lead, $300 for those leads, and you turn out one closing out of it, is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it. It's a lot of work though, and no one can really define for you how much work that is going to take. All I can tell you is you have to keep on going until you find the end result. So a couple of things to keep an eye on. When people ask me numbers, they say, what number should I be watching? What's a good number? It really depends on who you ask that question to. I've seen stuff so far across the board that it's impressive. One thing I always look at is click-through ratio, CTR, click-through ratio. So if you're in the back end of Ads Manager and you're looking at all of your ads that you have running, or they may have run in the past, one, you can define the date range of those ads. So you can see lifetime, past 30 days, past 7 days, or custom date range. Next to that, there's a little drop down that lets you select all of these different performance metrics. You can choose engagement metrics. You can choose cost metrics per lead, cost per impressions. There's all different kinds of layering that you can look at in terms of the metrics for the numbers. So one of the ones that I look at, click-through ratio, CTR, industry average in real estate is 0.9%, 0.9%. And what that means is every time that an ad shows up on someone's feed, 0.9% of the time, they're clicking on the ad to get more information, to learn more about whatever you're offering, a download, a house, a Best Buy list, whatever it is. I pulled up the numbers on our ads right now that we're seeing. We're at a 6.51% ratio on our click-through ratio. And that's because some of the things that we talk about in the digital marketing course, and we've talked about the past several weeks, there's specific things that we have tested that draw people's attention, that get them to engage more, that gets them to go further into our funnel and engage more with our ads, whether it's retargeting of those people who have engaged with previous ads. There's different things you can do there to drive up that click-through ratio. And click-through ratio is important because it tells us if people actually find our ad interesting enough to engage with. If you see that number drop, the reason it's important to watch is that if they don't find it interesting, Facebook's going to knock it off its pedestal and say, we're not going to serve it to as many people. They'll still take your money for it, right? They're still going to take your money for it because that's how they're set up that way. They're their business. If you say, here's $10, they're going to use just about all that $10. I have yet to see a time where I put an ad budget into Facebook and they did not use it unless the ad was not servable based on their advertising guidelines. So really pay attention to your click-through ratio. If you see it dropping too low, again, 0.9% is kind of the average across the industry. We see about a 6.5% ratio or click-through rate. If you see it drop below that, I would start paying attention and trying to figure out what's going on there. See if it's your ad copy, maybe your image isn't compelling enough, or maybe the offer that you have isn't what your audience wants. Maybe it's your audience targeting, all that kind of stuff. Could be anything, but start testing things. Typically, if you don't see it pop up within 24 to 48 hours, also depending on how many people it's been served to. If it's 10 people, that's too small of a sample size. Facebook likes to see at least 500 people before it starts giving you really solid metrics back. So wait for about 500 people, and that will depend on how much money you're spending per day. So that's the first one to keep an eye on, click-through ratio. Second big one is cost per click. So even if you're running lead generation ads, you can still see how much it costs you per click, CPC, right? And really you want to see this be a pretty low number, because you're going to have more people click on an ad than people are actually going to go in and sign up for the ad, right? So I've seen this number all across. I mean, as I looked into this, anywhere from $2 an ad up to 30, 40, 50, $150 per click-through percentage. So it really depends. So cost per click-through can really depend. Typically, we see between 50 cents and $1.50. Can go higher than that if you're doing luxury properties. Can go higher than that if you're on a really custom list that you're targeting, a really segmented list that you're going after. It can be different. So I would say generally $1.50 to $1.50 is what you want to see there, with the ideal intent of getting that cost per lead, which we're going to talk about in a second, as low as possible. So if your cost per click is too high, it's naturally going to increase the cost per lead, because it means that more people have to click through your ad for it to capture somebody's interest and get their information, which at the end of the day, we're talking more about lead generation statistics right now than just branding. The third one that I keep an eye on, I'm always thinking about cost per lead. It's the number one thing people ask, well, how much are you paying for a lead? How much are you paying for a lead? It's interesting that people get so hung up in cost per lead when it comes to ads in Facebook, where they act like there's a huge difference between a $5 lead and a $50 lead. When if you go outside of our vertical and look at other industries, people are paying $500, $600, $700, $800, $900,000 for leads per lead. I know in our market, in certain segments or zip codes in the area I'm in the Raleigh market, for Zillow leads, for example, can be up to $700, $800, $1,000 per lead. And even though those are lower in the funnel, they're not always the greatest. So I look at that and I say, what do I want my cost per lead to be? Facebook's industry, their benchmarks that they're releasing, I've heard the number be $57 per lead for real estate professionals. $57 per lead was the average across the board for real estate professionals, cost per lead. Ours were significantly lower. And my caveat here is I do believe that that's going to be based on location and based on price point. So if you're attacking a very high-end price point, I know we've mentioned this before, those price points tend to cause the cost of lead to go higher. They can go up to $20, $25 a lead. So if you're generating things that are lower than that, it's pretty good. For us, we're generally, I mean, right now it's like $1 to $2 a lead on a bad day, $1 to $2 a lead. If we're in the luxury space for our area, 5 to 10, can be 15, depending on the exclusiveness of the property, depends on the type of targeting that we do. So those are the three main metrics you want to keep an eye on: click-through ratio, cost per click, and cost per lead. And again, I go back to, at the end of the day, if your content is getting in front of the 5 or 10 people, and hypothetically saying we don't want to spend money only getting in front of 5 to 10 people, that would be terrible. And if those 5 to 10 people end up buying with you or selling with you, is it worth it? I think it's worth it. I think it's a good number to hang your hat on. So I think those are metrics. And again, don't get so caught up in the glory metrics of, well, my ad had 6,500 reach, or it got, all this attention. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, if they didn't do anything, if it doesn't bring you a result, if you're just going for branding, that's great, right? If you get 10,000 people to look at your ad and that was the goal, perfect. Branding ads that's a great outcome. So going back to our outcome conversation, that's perfect. But for all these other ones, you want to have a very defined number for you to concentrate on.
Right. Well, great metrics, and we definitely get those questions a lot. I will just chime in very quickly on this because we get the cost per lead question so much, and for you to share the number that Facebook put out for industry standard of 57, I think you quoted, and then you guys getting $1 to $2 a lead on yours. For those of you who are listening who haven't been through Ben's course, I can tell you with all the folks who we coach who have been through Ben's course, every one of them is reporting to us less than $5 a lead on this. In fact, one of our big teams that I was chatting with earlier this week, through really getting clear on what they're doing with Pixel and with retargeting, they've driven their lead cost down below $1 a lead right now. And so it's there, folks. We're not overemphasizing this just for the sake of being dramatic. So just want to give that to you too. So Ben, we got a few more minutes we can go here. And I know pillar content is a big thing to get into. So do you have time to maybe kind of set the table on the key pieces of pillar content before we wrap up today?
Yeah, it's a good thing to talk about. We talked about pillar content a lot, and part of what I wanted to do was kind of give them just the overview of if you want 12 pieces of content, right? This is how you do it. This is how simple it is. And it's a beautiful thing once you start doing it the first time, second time, third time, you're going to go, this is super easy. And I stressed about making content on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, when really you're talking about making 4 pieces of content. And really what we're going to do today is talk about one piece of content and then just break it down to how we would roll this out on our calendar. So let's start with right now, 5 ways to sell your home in the new market, right? I don't love that title. So 5 ways to sell your home during the COVID-19 pandemic. The reason we would choose that title, one, it gives them a list, which people really like numbered lists. And 2, I know COVID-19 or pandemic is a really hot search term right now. So if I'm thinking of putting this on YouTube as a video, it's going to get a lot of traction. And then thinking through the model that Frank Kern gives of how to yay without boo, something good without something bad, you could go 5 ways to sell your home during an economic recession. I would go find the buzzword of the day, look at all the economic news, take that buzzword, and that's going to go in my title, right? So that's going to be our title. And you can approach this from one of 2 ways. The first way you can do this is you can write out the blog post. So you can sit down, type it all up, say, these are the 5 points that I want to hit. Boom, 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 5 points. Introduction, 5 points. Call to action at the end with a conclusion, maybe some additional things or a download of a pre-consultation guide, something about how to stage your home, whatever it is. So you can start with either a blog post or you can start with a video. One way or the other. At the end of the day, though, we are going to have a video and a blog post, right? And it needs to be long form. So if you do the video, you could just go through your intro, 5 points, conclusion, call to action, and then have that transcribed. One of the best sources for you to use to get this done is use Fiverr or Upwork. Fiverr or Upwork. Those are 2 great places to post content or post jobs for people and find out about things or have them do things for you on this. And that's important. If you don't know how to edit videos, you don't have to know how to edit videos. Let someone else do that for you. It's not super expensive and it'll give you good pieces of content. So what you're gonna do, long form video on this. Long form video. This is the pillar, right? So this blog post and this video, this is your pillar. And you're gonna break this down. So when we take the long form video, you're gonna post the long form video natively to Facebook. You're gonna post it natively to YouTube. You're gonna post it natively to your website, Instagram TV, and even LinkedIn. Right? We're going to post it, and natively means you're going to upload the actual video into the platform. They do not play well together. We have tested this. YouTube does not perform well on Facebook. You cannot use that link and then hope it shows up. Will it go on your Facebook page? Absolutely. Will Facebook serve it to anybody? Absolutely not. They will not. They will kill it. We actually saw it happen in our groups where they suppressed it in our groups. So you want to make sure you're uploading your video natively. And Facebook's actually showing they really like long form content. So things that are longer than 3 minutes long, make sure you're putting those on Facebook as well. So you're going to post the long form video on all of those sites, right? So that's pieces of content on every single site. And then your blog is going to go, you can post it on your website and LinkedIn. LinkedIn really likes articles posted on their website. It gets good traction on there as well. And then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to cut out 5 1-minute clips from the video. 5 1-minute clips. And it can be 30 seconds to 1 minute long. And the way to do it is, since you have a 5-point, 5 ways to sell your home, take each one of those points and you're going to cut out little pieces of it. And you can send that right over to the person on Fiverr. Say, I want this from 1 minute 3 seconds to 1 minute 53 seconds. I want that as a clip, right? And they have them send that back to you. You're going to cut out 5 of those, and then you're going to post it on Facebook. You're going to post that on Instagram. You're going to post that on LinkedIn. On Facebook, short copy. Remember the story. We're telling a story here. So you want to post a short copy, post it inside of groups. People tend to interact with those in groups. And then what you're doing is you're going to drive it from that video on long form back to your website, right? Because we can lead capture on our website. So we're going to post the short video back to our long form content. Again, the pillar content is where everything's going to be redirected back to. And then Instagram, you can upload it there, do a short 1-sentence thing, and then post the long form link back to your website in your bio in Instagram. So you can have the video, say full link in bio, they go to your website. Again, we're funneling the traffic back to the website. And then LinkedIn, you're going to focus more on statistics. So get them statistics from the video or any kind of meat from the video. One of the 5 points. Why is this an important statistic? Give them information along those lines. Again, link it back to your website. So now we're up to, what is that? 7 pieces of content. The next 5 pieces of content that you can do, and this will round out your 12, use quote cards, Quote, quote cards is one of my favorite things. You take the information you have on your blog post now, and you're going to chunk it down to like the most important sentence. Get 5 of those, format it for each platform you're going to post it on. And it's really simple to do. You use Canva, set a template up for yourself, get the right sizing, and then use a program like Buffer or Hootsuite, and then you can just blast that stuff out there or sequentially schedule it to go out. And then from there, again, link back to your website on all those cards as well. So when you post a quote card, like this is step number 1, or this is an important quote about how to sell your home in today's market, whatever your card says, then you're going to link that back to the long form video pillar content that we created. And that's 12 steps, 12 pieces of content, boom, done for you right there. And so it takes you maybe 2 hours to put this all together, and you just created 12 pieces of content. The bonus thing you can do with all of this stuff that you're going to make off this one video is take those 1-minute clips, work that into your drip sequence on follow-up for any leads or maybe any prospects that you have. Say, hey, here's a video I just did, go watch it. Send them to the long form video on your website so that you can capture their information or get to see if they're interested or not. Use it as a piece of your content campaigns or your campaign drip programs as well. So that's the big thing about pillar content. Take that one article, one long form video, and you're going to break it down. And then everything's going to follow back up to that video. Everything's going to funnel back up to that video. So that's pillar content. And I think we did that in like 3 minutes or less. So that was pretty good.
That was awesome. That was awesome. So I'm sitting here, I'm watching this, and I'm thinking about the observer and saying, wow, it sounds like a lot. I know we talk about this all the time. And so one piece of advice that you would give for them if they're thinking, God, man, all right, I hear you, Ben, and where do I get started? What do I do?
First thing I would do is write the blog article or shoot the video. Take that long form piece of content. If you don't do anything else, just use that as your jump off point. And really, I would emphasize the video. Facebook's numbers for this year, I think like 30% of their platform is video. They're anticipating by this time, 2024, I think it is, they're going to be 90% video. So I would start really moving heavily into that place right now. So you're at the front end of that, not the back end of it. So first thing you do is just at least create the one base piece of content, because you can use it as a drip campaign piece. You can use it for so many other things, even if you don't do any of the other social media pieces where you chop it up.
Sure. Great stuff. Got one question from the Q&A before we wrap up from Joshua. Thank you, Joshua, for the question. Ben, what's your best tip in the ad specifications on lowering cost per click without lowering the value of the lead? So how do we lower CPC without lowering the quality of the lead?
Great question. I think it goes back to storytelling, right? We have to make sure we're appealing to the group that we're targeting. So that's one thing we've done really well. We've worked really hard on is saying, who do we want this ad to land in front of? And then capturing their attention so that your cost per click tends to go up if they cycle through it and maybe they weren't the right person that you were targeting. That tends to drive your cost per click up. So know your outcome. Who are we talking to would be the first place I would start. And then from there, making sure that my ad copy or my ad narrative or my image appeals to those people so that it's not confusing to them. Because if they see the ad, remember when people scroll, they don't see any of the text. They don't see the headline, they see the image. And if the image catches their eye, they're going to read the headline. And then they're going to go back up and read the ad copy. And then they're going to click on it. So if we're ambiguous in any of that, then we need to really clear that up. So know who you're targeting, and then work backwards from the image, headline, and then ad copy itself.
Yep. Great job. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. If you joined us late, Phoebe Lael Chambers was the winner of our client testimonial contest. Congrats, Phoebe. And thanks, everybody, clients who played the game there. We're going to be back with you for Digital Marketing Wednesday 2 weeks from today. So we're 8 weeks into this now. We've hit you weekly for 8 weeks. You can check all of the videos and live trainings in the feed of the Facebook group, and be sure to share that with some of your friends as well as we continue to grow the group. We'll be back here 2 weeks from now. We'll see you tomorrow for a live music happy hour as well. Thanks, Ben. Great job.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.